Well, it's 11 o'clock and we are going to get started with our um, Monday morning webinar. Welcome everyone. My name is Jessie Jones and I am the volunteer coordinator for Coast Watch. And I know that we have a lot of new people here this morning that may not be Coast Watch volunteers, and we also have a lot of Coast Watch volunteers joining us. So thank you everyone who continues to come to these webinars that we started when the quarantine began. These webinars were like a replacement for the normal programs that we have out on the beach from Fort Stevens all the way down to Gold Beach. And some of these webinars they've all been recorded, and some of them are actually available on our YouTube channel, but not all of them. All of them should be ready to watch by June 15th. So that's a week from today. And I will share that. Actually, why don't you contact me if you would like that YouTube address, because I haven't figured out how to do a bit.ly for it yet. But we'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar today. But all of these videos, including this one will actually probably be available tomorrow at the very latest, but the rest of them will be available in a week. So we're going to get started here. Again, I see a few more have entered. My name is Jessie and I'm the volunteer coordinator with Oregon Coast Watch. And Coast Watch is a program of Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, and we are a mile-by-mile beach adoption program where you walk your mile, you choose a mile, and then you collect some data for us. And then we also connect you with universities, scientists, and other partners to collect other kinds of data, everything from beached birds, live birds, marine debris, sea stars, and a lot more. So if you are not already a Coast Watcher and you would like more information, at the end of our program today will be my contact information. Coast Watch is a program of Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. Oregon Shores is primarily interested in protecting our coast and land use. And if you would like to become a member of of Oregon Shores, you may do that. Your membership does help this Coast Watch program and Oregon Shores priorities as well. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about Oregon's marine reserves. And the goal of this website or this webinar today is really to connect Coast Watch volunteers and other members of the public who maybe aren't Coast Watch volunteers to efforts that are happening in our marine reserves and volunteer opportunities that are happening in our marine reserves. And to meet the people who you see here on the right of your screen, or maybe at the top of your screen, depending on how you're seeing your screen, who are either staff with these marine reserves or volunteers, like a lead volunteer with these marine reserves. And so I'm going to introduce these folks in just a minute. And I guess we'll start here at the top. You can see with this slide here, Cape Falcon. So I myself am located in Astoria. So the closest marine reserve to me is Cape Falcon. And that will be Margaret Minnick. You want to give a wave, Margaret? And she'll talk more in just a few minutes. And then a little bit further south from there, Cascade Head Marine Reserve, that is Paul. And then also joining us today is Dennis White with the Otter Rock Marine Reserve. And then we have Tara with Cape Perpetua. And we don't have anyone here today from Redfish Rocks, but if you would like more information about them, please give me an email or a call and I can hook you up with them as well. So there are 5 marine reserves currently in Oregon, and these are fairly new as well. California has had many established, but we in Oregon have really just kind of began with this. And then associated with those marine reserves are 9 marine protected areas as well. And if I don't get into enough here in this introduction, please feel free to ask questions of the presenter as we are going through. And as you can see, they went into effect 2012, 2014, and 2016. So really, these are new areas, and learning about them is new to a lot of the public as well. These areas are managed by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and also many partners actually help with the activities and the conservation of these areas. The goals: to conserve marine habitats and biodiversity. These areas are wonderful, rich areas for scientific research. And then also we, I'm sorry, I got a little bit distracted from an email coming in. These areas are also, they add to the economic, the economics of our coastal areas as well. They bring people to them, all kinds of the public and students and other conservationists, and meeting in these areas to learn and just to experience beauty as well. We're going to learn a little bit more today about what is allowed in these marine reserves. We have had a lot of questions. I have had a lot of questions from some of our coast watchers about this over the last year that I've been doing this job, almost a year. So we want to continue to learn about what is allowed in these areas, what is allowed to be removed, where the boundaries are, and that type of a thing. So we are going to, we'll learn a lot more as this session goes on, which is why we're doing this today. So thanks for you 5 for joining us. We're now going to go with Margaret, and we're all going to turn off our cameras. And I'm going to introduce Margaret Minnick from the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. You are up first, Margaret, and thank you so much for being here today. And I wanted to
thank you.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. And I wanted to let everybody know that there will be plenty of time at the end for questions. If you have something you just can't wait to ask Margaret or each one while they're talking, then go ahead and raise your hand. But the idea was here to let everybody, to let each representative of the Marine Reserve kind of go through and share, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. All right, Margaret.
All right, thank you so much, Jessie. Good morning, everyone. As Jessie mentioned, I am the coordinator for the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, which is based in Manzanita. And our organization works to create awareness and understanding of Oregon's marine reserves, and in particular the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, which includes this beautiful place you're seeing on your screen right now, which is Short Sand Beach in Oswald West State Park. So you can go to the next slide. So here is the Cape Falcon, well, a map of the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve site. It is 20 square miles, and it's made up of a no-take marine reserve, which is the red area on the map. And then there are 2 associated marine protected areas, or MPAs. And there is, so in the red area, there is no take at all. So all removal of marine life is prohibited, and ocean development is also prohibited. In the West MPA, which is the bigger blue block out there, so further out in the ocean, salmon fishing by troll and crabbing are allowed there. And then there's a small MPA called the Shoreside MPA, which runs along Falcon Cove Beach. And there you are allowed to do recreational fishing from by hook and line from the sandy beach only. So in case you're not familiar with this area or not closely familiar with it, it's just between Cannon Beach and Manzanita, and it's off of Oswald West State Park. And this is a really, good location for a marine reserve, because it's adjacent to those conserved acres in Oswald West, which is about 2,500 acres. And then it's also adjacent to a proposed rainforest reserve that North Coast Land Conservancy is working on putting together. And that'll be another 5,000 acres of conserved forest there next to the ocean. So having that conserved land and the conserved oceans side by side is really powerful in terms of habitat resiliency, because so many land-sea connections drive the environmental health of our coastline. So the classic example, of course, is salmon, who spend life both in the rivers and in the ocean, but there are many other connections as well. So you might be wondering what lives in Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. So if you can go to the next slide, Jesse. Thanks. So as far as fish go, researchers have found that black rockfish are the most abundant fish at Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. And there are actually many species of rockfish on Oregon's coastline. They're very common, and they are pretty interesting. Now, ours up here is not the most beautiful. There's some kind of prettier ones down south, but rockfish are interesting because they give birth to live young, which is weird for fish. And then they also live to be pretty old. So the black rockfish only lives to be about 20 years old, but some species live to be 80 to 100 years old. And not to knock the black rockfish, 20 years is pretty old for fish, as far as fish go. And the old female fish of rockfish are really important because they actually have the most babies. So unlike people, they keep on having babies their whole lives, and the older they get, the more babies they have, so they don't ever really get to be like grandmas. So the old female fish are really important for maintaining those healthy populations of the animals. So on the next slide, we've got a video of fish taken in Oregon's marine reserves. So this shows you some of the cool footage that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is getting through their research program. Those are black rockfish there. There's a lingcod cruising through. And those are some of those pretty rockfish that are a lot more common down south. So next slide. There are also a lot of invertebrate animals. So those are animals without backbones, as most probably know. Examples of ocean invertebrates include like sea anemones, which you're probably familiar with from tide pooling. Also things like crabs. And white-plumed anemones, which are in this picture here, are the most abundant invertebrate species that's found at Cape Falcon. So they can actually clone themselves by breaking off a small piece of their body. So that's an interesting fact about them. On the next slide, we've got pictures of sea stars and sea urchins. This is another ODF and W picture. And both sea stars and sea urchins are related, and they have a 5-part radial symmetry. And we're looking into hopefully getting going on some sea star surveys at Cape Falcon soon. And then lastly, I've also got, well, not lastly, sorry, also got a cool video. This is actually from Otter Rock, so it was not taken at Cape Falcon, but we don't have any cool video like this from Cape Falcon, but we do have marine mammals like this harbor seal, also gray whales, orca, other sea lions. And lastly, there are seabirds. So you can see that on the next slide. Seabirds that we see at Cape Falcon include common murres, which are actually the most abundant seabird off of Oregon's coast, cormorants, pigeon guillemots, which is this picture, marbled murrelets, which Tara might talk more about, and tufted puffins. And all these birds get their food from the sea. And if you click to the next slide, Jesse, you can see a video of how they do that by swimming underwater, which is pretty cool. Most of these birds are actually better swimmers than flyers, and they can dive, common murre can dive up to 200 feet and hold its breath for about 2 minutes. So what do the Friends of Cape Falcon do? So the Friends of Cape Falcon, as Jesse mentioned, support Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife through outreach and education about the marine reserve. So ODF&W has a pretty limited capacity to do outreach that's locally based. So our role is pretty key. And as Jessie mentioned, there are friends groups at each of the marine reserves that we'll be hearing from today. So we do our work through hikes, lectures, and boat tours. We also do research and monitoring, including ocean acidification monitoring. We've got a monitor at Short Sand Beach that goes in every year. We did that in partnership with Oregon State University. And we also have supported development of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's management plan by doing community outreach to get input from various groups out here on the coast. And we also help to organize community science in the reserve, including, you can show the next slide, we do some seabird monitoring at Devil's Cauldron. So here's a picture of our beautiful site where we get to do that every summer. And that's just starting up again. And I just learned this morning that we will have access this year, but we're just limiting the number of people who can come out at any given time. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. And the next slide shows, we've also been working with Oregon State Parks, developing a volunteer trailhead and beach ambassador program. And we started that sort of in a pilot phase last summer. And this year we were planning to really launch it for real, but obviously things have changed a little bit and we're still kind of figuring out what it's going to look like. But we're doing that in collaboration with Oregon Coast Visitors Association and Oregon State Parks. And our role in the partnership is really to just make sure that environmental stewardship messaging stays a key part of the outreach, because it has multiple goals, but we want to just make sure that that message stays in there because it's so important. So if you're interested in learning more or getting involved with us, you can email me. My email address is on this slide. And we also have a website also listed there, and social media. So just two more slides to wrap up. Just wanted to make sure to mention that we have a lot of partners we'll work with in this work, and all the partnerships on the coast are really important. And this slide just shows logos of organizations that actually are part of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve that come to our monthly meetings and help us make decisions and provide guidance and add capacity. So it's just so important to work with them. Also, we are fiscally sponsored by the Lower Nehalem Community Trust, which is a land trust in Manzanita. So if you are interested in getting in touch with us or donating to us, you'll find the information at their website. And lastly, I just have a contact info slide for anyone who wants to jot down my info and follow up with me. We are always looking for more volunteers, whatever level you can do, whatever you're interested in. I would love to hear from you. So now I'll kick it back to Jessie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret, so much for being here. That was wonderful. And so I'll just leave Margaret's slide up here just for a moment. And if you would like to write that down, but at the end, we'll also have another chance to, in our Q&A, if you need this information again. So thanks, Margaret. We'll see you at the end of the show.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. So next we have Paul Robertson from Cascade Head Marine Reserve. And again, you can ask questions if you absolutely can't hold it, but otherwise save your questions until the end of the program and you'll have plenty of time. Hi, Paul. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, all. As Jessica said, my name is Paul Robertson. I'm with the Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve, and we are a United Nations site out here on the Oregon coast. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But I just want to mention that we work with the Audubon Society and the Coast Range Association as a working group associated with the Cascade Head Marine Reserve. And we're just working to provide awareness through a lot of our programming, which we'll touch on at the end as far as what kind of volunteer opportunities may be available for you all. But if you want to go to the next slide really quick. So first off, got to have the beautiful aerial view. So everything you're looking at here basically is in your marine reserve and the Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve. That's Cascade Head there, as you can see. And everything out 3 miles is in the marine reserve. And then underneath the headland there is the Salmon River Estuary and the West Wind Spit, the sandy beach there. That sandy beach actually is part of a no fishing, shore fishing zone, kind of the opposite of what we heard up north there, as we'll see on some of the maps too. Over that little other rocky outcropping is the city of Lincoln City. And so Lincoln City runs 7 miles of beaches, as any of the local coast watchers will know. Some beautiful sandy beaches there along Lincoln City's shore. And just on the near edge of that is the Rhodes End State Recreation Area, which has just recently reopened and is where we do our bio blitzes and events, some of our events that we'll talk about. The West Wind site that is, I mentioned earlier, is where we'll do our some of our events. And that beautiful estuary is where we're running pontoon boats for excursions. So just kind of areas of reference to keep in mind. Next slide. So just briefly, the Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve is one of 701 around the world. I just kind of want to point this out because we're pretty lucky to have this here in North Lincoln County, South Tillamook County. And there's 701 around the world. And some of those are transboundary, but most of them are, individual countries, 124 different countries around the world that we share this designation with. Next slide. And then within the United States, just as reference, to kind of really kind of shout out how I think important this is as an area for Oregon. It's the only one left in Oregon. So there were a few in Oregon up until the redesignations that came in about 2015 to 2017, and Cascade Head was the only one that re-upped and is our only biosphere reserve in Oregon. Next slide. So just as reference for folks, we are talking about the marine reserve here, but I just want to let people know where those boundaries are. Basically, anytime you're coming in on 18, you're entered into the biosphere reserve. You're going down that Salmon River Highway, which is 18, you're in the biosphere reserve. And then when you get to what is this kind of, it's blue and speckled areas on the map, those are areas that are managed use, and so that's part of our marine reserve, the marine protected areas. And then areas in red, either terrestrial or out at sea, are areas that are core protected areas. So Jesse's highlighting those for you there. So for our marine reserve, you have the red area, and then the marine protected areas, which we'll talk about shortly here, are those areas in blue. Next slide. So for Cascade Head Marine Reserve, as I mentioned, and I'll get so I can see the screen a little better on my side too, as we talk about it. We have similarly a no-take zone. So basically, you can't fish out there. You can't be deploying gear. It's really just meant for research. I always like to take it in a different tone and say, this is the research zone, instead of the no-take zone, because it really is meant for research and to better understand how our ocean is operating and how we can best protect it. We use this area to compare it to areas in the north and to the west and to the south, and also all up and down the rest of the Oregon coast, to compare those sites long-term as to how the ecological impacts may be occurring or being benefited by this marine reserve. So they're really important research zones for the state, and we're happy to have one here right off the coast of Lincoln City. The red lines are just to the north of that headland that we talked about that was at Rhodes End. And then further north, you see in gray that kind of shoreline excursion area. That's a no fishing zone for the shoreline of West Wind. And then for people that know Lincoln City well, the southern boundary of the reserve is, it's right there, 30th Street. It's right where Surf Tides is, a hotel, famous hotel. It's been there since the 60s. So that is kind of the demarcation of the southern boundary of the marine reserve. So anything in that area, people shouldn't be taking fish or even trying to take fish. You shouldn't be collecting any seaweed. Basically, you know, if it's growing and it's live, it's meant to stay there. You know, you can walk the beaches, you can surf, you can wade. You know, I also like to point out the things you can do, but really it's just meant for research as far as once you get towards the water. Next slide. The marine protected areas, as a comparison, do have opportunities for fishing. You know, and other activities. Again, you can, you know, walk beaches, you can whale watch out at sea, you can do lots of things as you could even in the marine reserve. You can whale watch. It's just a fishing exclusion. But there, you know, like if you're a mussel harvester like myself, and you want to harvest mussels in Lincoln City, you can do that. But you just need to be south of that that boundary. And like the picture showing there is right there at 15th Street. It comes down to the beach, and there's opportunities to do, you know, with of course your ODF&W license, those type of activities. But the restrictions for the MPA to the north is that you can take fish, salmon by troll or crab, but you can't be, you know, in any of these using net gear. And it's the same out in the south, no net gear fishing, although you can take other fish with other, you know, hook and line. And then and to the west, I should say, you can take crab and troll for crab, net for, get your own crab too. So the reserve and the horseshoe ring of marine protected areas do have different designations, and you know, obviously check with ODF&W if you have any concerns or questions. Next slide. So the Cascade Biosphere Reserve, some of our activities in the last year, we had a really bang up first year. 2019 was our first programming year. And in 2020, we got right out the gate and started this exhibit that we have at the Lincoln City Cultural Center. And it's called Thanks Be to the Sea. And it's really an educational exhibit of art and science put together by our co-organizer, Duncan Berry. This exhibit, if you're interested in seeing it, actually still also is at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. So if you're interested in learning about these species that are in the Marine Reserve, in the Biosphere Reserve, go and see this exhibit at the aquarium. And it's an opportunity just to learn more about all the different types of fish and wildlife that are out there that we depend on, including in the whale tail that you see in the upper right portion of that one picture, which actually was a gray whale that washed ashore in May just this year at the West Wind Beach, and Duncan actually printed that whale's tail, and that was part of that exhibit. So we've done that, and we'll continue to show these exhibits. But as far as activities go, if you go to the next slide, we also do what we call these Gyotaku fish printing exhibits and events. And we ran this one actually in conjunction with the Thanks Be to the Sea exhibit. And, you know, that's where we're welcoming and bringing people in to learn about, to do some fish printing. So it's a very interactive thing, but they really get to learn about the species that are out at sea, and then that they can learn and really take home something very tangible about their experience and share that with folks at home. So next slide. We also do bio blitzes. We actually scheduled 2 for this year. We actually had to cancel the first one, which was our June one, but we're hoping to do one in July. So if you're interested in participating, volunteering with that, give us a call or let us know. But we're out there at Road's End, and we're bringing experts to the beaches to share the tide pool experiences with families, and hope that people take away a lot from that. And the next slide. And then I think I mentioned we do these boat excursions up the Salmon River. And so these are like hour-and-a-half long floating classrooms, if you will. And so, you know, we need people to assist and help with those kind of events. And so please feel free to reach out, as well as with the Welcome the Salmon Home, which we will hopefully have do again in September with Westwind. And then really briefly, I just want to mention our last slide here, the classroom field experiences that we're starting. We did get a grant to bring this kind of stuff to Westwind, and you can just go to the next slide there, Jesse. And we're basically doing our salmon experience, our floating classroom, as well as a nature hike for third graders and sixth graders this year. And we're just launching this with the Lincoln County School District and West Wind, and we hope to be able to implement that in a safe manner through the school year of 2021. So that's it from me. There's my contact details again, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the Biosphere Reserve or the Rain Reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for being here. All right, so if any of you have questions for Paul, you can ask them after our next two guests. And Dennis, we're going to move on to you, Dennis, so you can unmute yourself and start your video. And actually, I think I can start your video for you. There you go. Dennis, I had turned you off because you popped up, but now you have, there you are. Wonderful.
I was wondering why it said I couldn't, it wasn't working.
Okay, well, welcome, Dennis. Dennis is a volunteer with the Friends of Otter Rock. They do not have any staff at this time, but Dennis is a longtime volunteer, and he's going to talk about some other volunteers. And Dennis, thank you for being here. And I just would like everybody to know that Dennis is a great photographer and has taken all of the photos that you're going to see in this presentation today. So take it away, Dennis.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. The Friends of Otter Rock is a very new organization. In fact, it's an organization in its own right. We are a part of Oregon Shores at the beginning here. So eventually we may incorporate as a nonprofit, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know that that's a terribly important factor. We're perfectly happy to be residing in Oregon Shores at this point in time, but we're just at the very beginning stages. And that one of the things that means that we're also desperately interested in, recruiting members to try to kick this off. So what you see here in the beginning is a picture, an overview, kind of almost an aerial view, although it actually was taken from a road. This tells you something about the elevation in this area of this rocky shoreline. It's a very dramatic place. Go ahead. So this is a shot from the Devil's Punch Bowl. This rock is the main rock that's off of the beach. It isn't Otter Rock. This is Gull Rock. And Gull Rock is the home to a lot of nesting birds in the summertime. And it's the most prominent one in the area. Next slide. Otter Rock is actually much further away. This is looking south from sort of the same location up the upper Punch Bowl area. And you can see that sort of long, low rock in the middle of the slide there. And that actually also defines some of the boundary of this area. The no fishing zone extends out to that rock and across to Gull Rock, the one you just saw. So boats can carry their gear in there, but they cannot fish. So this is the restricted area in our case. And in the distance there, you can see that spit that goes out into sea. That's Yaquina Head, just to give you some orientation. We are, this reserve is just south of Depot Bay and north of Newport, and goes out. That rock that's out there, Otter Rock, is about midway down Beverly Beach, if you know where that is. So that's kind of defines the boundary of the reserve. And this is that shot you saw at the beginning. It's taken from above. You can see that on the top part there's a parking lot, and that's the parking lot for the Devil's Punch Bowl. This is really an incredibly busy area at times like the 4th of July, and at low tide you can actually walk into the Punch Bowl. And last 4th of July there were over 100 people in the Punch Bowl, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But that upper parking lot is very popular. There's also an access down to the beach. Why don't you go to, and the structure on the left there is the Otter Crest community. It is on the left of those buildings, which is a restaurant. There are condos and that sort of thing. And the shoreline is part of the reserve, but that's private property at that point. This is a similar shot. This is taken down closer to the beach, and you can see the expanse of the beach, and that outcropping there is the punch bowl. And at low tide, and we've had some very low tide lately, -2. Last year at one of the BioBlitz events, we discovered that not only could you get out to the end of that point, but you could actually walk around to Beverly Beach because the tides had shifted enough additional sand, about 2 or 3 feet's worth, so that you could actually walk all the way around the tip of it and onto Beverly Beach. And around underneath the punch bowl there is I think one of the best tide pools I have seen. That there's a wall of all kinds of crustaceans and shellfish and sea stars just populating that area around there. In fact, they do a sea star count in this site along with some others. Next slide. This is the punch bowl. And you can see the water is mostly drained there. This is the people park in the parking lot and walk out here. And if it's raining, they'll run out, take a picture, and get back in their cars. But it has a lot of visitors almost all times of year, and it's reopened now, so it's crowded right now. And there are 3 oyster catcher nests up on that plateau that you see there, and they're one of the species that we're surveying and trying to protect. But you can imagine with 100 people inside that space, all shouting and talking and creating a lot of noise, what kind of disturbance that might amount to for these poor beasts. Go ahead. It's a very popular spot. You can see that there's Gull Rock in the distance there. This is a typical summer day at low tide, and those rocks that you saw on the beach are all exposed at this point, and people walk all over them. And one of the things that we'd like to try to accomplish is that we've seen up to 20 school buses there at once, which is really overcrowding. So one of the challenges is to kind of interact with the schools more effectively and try to get them to time their visits to not overwhelm the space, but also we'd like to know what they're teaching them and what kind of precautions they're offering them before they get out there. So are they talking about the delicacy and the need to sort of preserve this, what to walk on, what not to walk on, and to be just very careful and respectful of all the flora and fauna that they can find in the area. Next slide. So this is one of the BioBlitzes. This is Fawn Custer, and sets up a table several times a year. You can see the access to the beach coming up through there. What you have to do is park at the lower level, not the upper one where the punch bowl is, but the lower level parking, and walk through a neighborhood to get down to the beach. And that's the pathway to the beach, which has been somewhat difficult and eroded during high tides. It gets washed away. There is no, any longer, there's no pavement there, but you can see the displays that Fawn has on her table there, and she's very ready to sort of guide people through what they can find in the area. Next slide. Here's Fawn just kind of interacting with some visitors, describing some of the creatures that one finds there, and you can see that a lot of little tide pools scattered around that you can look in, and it's very easy when the tide is coming in to get trapped in this area. So if you ever go there, you should be cautious and aware of the tide, so that you can, some of the area closer to shore may fill in with water. So you might, more than once, people have found themselves having to wade back to safety. Next slide. One of the other activities that happens a lot are the debris surveys. So this is one of them. And people spread out, walk the length of the beach and collect things. And they'll do several passes up and down the beach to make sure they covered the whole beach. And then we gather together to see what we got, and kind of go over and classify the different things and make a report. So this is by way of seeing what's coming in from the sea, kind of the waste there, and also what's been placed there by visitors. And one of the things we'd like to do is to try to improve education around these areas so that people don't just throw their trash on the beach. However, we do get there's quite a bit coming in from boats and the sea. Next slide. Okay, so these guys are the folks that got us started in this, because there were 3 nests last year and have been for years ongoing, and all of them failed last year. And part of that's because of the disturbances. There are other reasons as well. There are predators. They're in a rocky area that's full of other creatures and so on. So it's not always easy to survive. But you can see, unfortunately, in yellow is our mission to protect and preserve rocky shore intertidal life, nesting and migrating seabirds and marine mammals that inhabit Devil's Punch Bowl Area State Park and Otter Rock Marine Reserve, Marine Gardens. Next slide. And here's a shot of a couple eggs with one of the oyster catchers. And those who have been involved in surveys know that that's one of the things you want to see. Are there eggs? Are they surviving? And do they go to the point of chicks? Next slide. So can you see the chicks here? They blend so well with the rocks when they're young like that. And yeah, Jessie is circling them now. They're escaping into the reaches of these rocks for better safety. That's mom up above there, or dad, I don't know which. It's hard to tell which is male and which is female. But these are the folks these are the birds that really prompted us to try to protect this area. Last year, we rounded up a group of volunteers from the area, not members of anything, to go around in the Otter Rock and the Punch Bowl area in particular, at particularly high volumes of visitors, to educate them, make sure they don't violate the signs of no climbing and that sort of thing, and to try to protect those nests. Unfortunately, all 3 nests that we know about failed last year for various reasons, one of which was somebody climbing up on the punch bowl where they shouldn't have been, removing an egg, placing it away from the nest, and they continued to sit on the remaining egg, but it never hatched. Next slide. So these are the kind of things that we were so far effective in having done to get more signs posted like this one: do not disturb the wildlife. And this is the beginning of the path that goes down to the beach that we saw. Next slide. And up above, there's actually a fence there, and it says no climbing and do not go beyond the fence, danger. And this is where people climb across the fence. And this is how they get down to those nests, and they are eager to do photo ops. We saw one couple with their dog, and the woman jumping up to be taken in a Photoshop right at the edge of the punch bowl. Next slide. And this is a brand new slide that we were able to get put in place. I have to give a shout out to the federal and state Fish and Wildlife administrations for being involved with us and posting these signs. One of the events that occurred last 4th of July was an individual on the beach had a drone that flew directly over the punch bowl, causing the 2 nesting birds nearest that site to leave the nest and try to attack the drone, thinking it was a predator. They're very territorial, and they'll attack gulls, they'll attack crows, they'll attack any kind of bird that's sort of in their space. So this is something that so these drones are prohibited, and we'll be trying to enforce this again this year. And so we desperately need help from volunteers, people who are willing to consider joining Otter Rock, especially if you live in that vicinity. Next slide. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Karen Driscoll. This is her, and she's kind of the oyster catcher lady. She's been doing this for years, has gobs of data that she has submitted to Audubon and others for research purposes. This shows her down in Baja with some newly born turtles that she's very excited about. So she's really kind of a very prominent figure around the Otter Rock area, and we're very grateful to her for all the work that she has done. And I think that's my last slide, unless you've put my name and address, which I should have included, but did not.
That's okay, Dennis. That's okay. This is the last slide of Karen here, and everyone, Dennis's email, and we can talk about this again. We'll share it again at the end, but is D as in Dennis, d1c1white@gmail.com. That's d1c1, and that's the letter 1, white, WHITE, @gmail.com. And we will be talking with Dennis more at the end about volunteer need and maybe some meetings as well. So keep your questions handy for Dennis, and we will talk with them all again after Tara is done. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Tara with the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve Collaborative. Thanks for being here today, Tara.
Thank you for having me, Jessie. My name is Tara Du Bois. I am the communications coordinator with the Cape Perpetua Collaborative. Go ahead, next. And the Cape Perpetua Collaborative stretches from Yachats to Florence. And it's something about this area that's really significant is that land-sea connection. And I like to start by kind of a high-level view of kind of everything that's within this area. So you've got the Marine Reserve and the Marine Protected Areas for Cape Perpetua. You've also got several state parks that stretch between Yachats and Florence. There's the 10-mile bird sanctuary off of 10 Mile. There's 2 Siuslaw National Forest, 2 wilderness areas within the Siuslaw National Forest. In addition to marine protected areas, we also have a globally important bird area. There's the Oregon Islands Refuge that are a little further out in the ocean. And there's several natural and cultural resources such as the Amanda Trail and the Amanda Statue, the 804 Trail, and a variety of other historical learning. Within this footprint also contains the largest sea cave in North America at the Sea Lion Caves. There's also a botanical garden in the north end of Yachats, and the coastal rainforest as well stretched along there as part of the Siuslaw National Forest. And we also get some good ocean upwelling in this area. And you might even be able to see that kind of in the top left picture there. You can see where there's part of it between the blue water and the land that some of it's kind of a murky brown. That is upwelling. So if you see that, it doesn't necessarily mean pollution. It just could mean that the ocean cold waters are coming in and the winds and everything's sitting just right. And it actually helps fuel the food web. Okay, next. So to go a little bit more into the boundaries of the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve, the Marine Reserve itself is the red portion, and that starts, if you're familiar with Devil's Churn, that's the point that would be, and that would go down south to 10 Mile. And all of these are 3 nautical miles out for the Marine Reserve and the protected areas here, as far as state waters go. To the north of the Marine Reserve, so Devil's Churn, north into Yachats at Smelt Sands, that's the boundary for the North Marine Protected Area. And within that area, you can only take salmon by troll and crab, and you can do hook and line fishing from the shore. Just south of the Marine Reserve, a little further to the west, you see or actually closest to the land. You have the South Marine Protected Area. And within that, you cannot use trawl fishing gear, and you can't take any schooling fish like herring, sardines, anchovies, those little schooling fish that you may use as bait. And hook and line fishing is allowed from the shore. And just to the west of that is the Seabird Protection Area. And this is an area where there's no take of any of those schooling fish. As Margaret mentioned briefly in her presentation, we get some of the highest abundance of compared to other areas of the elusive marbled murrelet in this range. And so they fly between the sea into the old growth forest up to 50 miles, and they nest in the old growth forest, but they live on the ocean. And so having an abundant source of food for them, they're known to nest mostly where they can get food. And so that's an area where you can't take any of the schooling fish. Let me think about what else I want to mention here. To the image to the right gives some idea of what it looks like underwater. So something significant about the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve, you can see the gray areas that are within the red outlines and even some in the blue. We've got a deep isolated rocky reef contained within the Marine Reserve. Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve is Oregon's largest marine reserve at 14.3 square miles. And if you add in the north and the south marine protected areas, that's an additional 19 square miles. And then the Seabird protected area is 22 square miles. It also goes up to about 164 feet deep. Okay. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to mention, it has some of the most biologically diverse species in the intertidal zone. Okay, Jesse, next. These are some photos that have been taken by ODFW during their research under the Marine Reserve. They use 4 different methods during their research: hook and line, where they take volunteers out on a boat, and they do ROV, which is a remote operated vehicle, and it has kind of 2 little red dots where they can take measurements with that. They do scuba, and they do a video lander. Within the Cape Perpetua area, because it's so deep, they do not do scuba diving, but they do the others. And yeah, these are some of the images that they have collected during that. A variety of number of species. Some of these you've seen in the other slideshows as well. They find several plumose anemone. They also find within the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve, I think our highest count of invertebrates is for the burrowing sea cucumber. And then this lower right-hand corner, the image, I don't know if you can tell, but it has the eels peeking out. You can kind of see a couple wolf eels peeking out there in the center. Okay, next. And the Cape Perpetua Collaborative was formed a couple of years ago, and their mission is to foster conservation and collaboration within local communities around scientific exchange. So they help conduct research, bring awareness to the marine reserves, and also work with volunteers and local businesses and communities on stewardship, passing out and handing out information on how to tread lightly when you're in the tide pools and different etiquette around that. Our 3 main goals are community engagement, which we do through a variety of different citizen science projects, which I'll highlight in the upcoming slides. We leverage resources. So an example with that is we have partnered the first couple years with ODF&W and the city of Yachats. And we did a 2-year comprehensive visitor intercept survey. And so here's a couple folks taking pictures. So if you are interested in learning more about that survey, feel free to connect with me. Really, you learn a lot about the visitor, what they know about the Marine Reserve and the area, kind of some demographics about them, and their value system as well. is what we've learned quite a bit. We learned that hiking and beach recreation were the two top activities. And we also discovered through the survey that a high percentage of folks ranked mental health and stress reduction above physical health as something that they get when they come to the Cape Perpetua area. And we also engage in partnerships. So we work with a variety of partners within the collaborative to work together. So we don't necessarily have to duplicate work. We can share information. And again, part of our work is to do outreach and share this information with local folks. Okay, next. And here are our partners. These are our founding partners. We also work with several other partners, which I'll highlight when I talk about the projects. But as you can see, we have some federal partners, we have some state partners, we have the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw down in Florence and south of the Marine Reserve. We've got some local nonprofits and also Discover Your Northwest. Next. And here are some projects that we conduct year round. We do the seabird colony monitoring during the summertime. That's this top left picture here. You can see where the location we do that is right around Heceta Head Lighthouse and also the Sea Lion Caves. So between Sea Lion Caves and Heceta Heads, that stretch that we do the bird monitoring. And we basically, during that project, we monitor the chicks from the moment, or the nest from the time they start creating the colony. And then we watch for the number of eggs that they lay, the number of eggs that hatch, and then how many of those chicks that actually fledge. A super fun project, and it's just adorable watching those little chicks grow up. And they get to adult size pretty much within just a couple of months. We also do the black oyster catcher monitoring with Audubon. And with that one, basically what they do is they go and they look for nests during the month of May. And then after that, they observe the nest to do something similar as the seabird colony monitoring to check the amount of eggs that are being laid and how many actually fledge. There's also the pelican survey that takes place in, I think it's May and September. And that's just really doing a pelican count between the hours of 4 and 8 p.m. And that's also with the Audubon Society. And then we've got the marbled murrelet survey during the summertime. That is an overnight excursion. This summer, I'm still not quite certain what adaptations we're going to be doing, but you can go to our website. That'll be on the end slide, and go to the events tab, and you'll see a whole list of events, a calendar, and we'll be keeping that up to date. But with this project, during the evening, you have sort of a miniature training and some learning about the marbled murrelet. And then you camp, and then you get up very early in the morning, like 3 or 4 in the morning. And you go and you listen for the birds, and you try to observe, and you count the birds from there. And then once you've done that in the forest, then you head out to this platform here, which is this picture with the lady in the pink coat, looking through some scopes, and then you view them on the water. We also do sea star surveys during the summertime, during the low tide series. We just did one this morning. And we have a survey spot. We do the survey spot, the same survey spot every year, and we will go and count and measure every sea star within that plot. And we also conduct monthly beach cleanups, marine debris surveys out of Cape Cove Beach at Cape Perpetua. So again, you can check out all of these events on the events calendar. And then we also have the Cape Perpetua BioBlitz series. We also canceled our June event, but we're looking ahead to August 22nd in hopes that we can conduct that. But in the meantime, you can go ahead and take observations on your own, kind of conduct your own little mini BioBlitz through the iNaturalist app. And you can look that up online at inaturalist.org. And if you do that and you're in the Cape Perpetua area, join our project, the Cape Perpetua BioBlitz series. And any observations you make will kind of go up into the cloud into our project. And what that does is over a series, over a certain period of time, it helps us monitor and observe and kind of keep track of the biodiversity, of the diversity of species and the amount of species that are within the area. And so all of these projects are done in conjunction with the Forest Service. We partner with the aquarium on the BioBlitz. The Sea Lion Caves helps us with the seabird colony monitoring, as well as the Seed Ahead bed and breakfast. Sometimes we can go up in there and do it out of those locations. Coast Watch, of course, is a big partner of ours. They help get information out regarding our sea star surveys and our beach cleanups. State parks, Surfrider and Audubon, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And next. And here's our website. It doesn't look like the website itself is showing up, but it is www.capeperpetuacollaborative.org. And you can see here, this is kind of the bottom part of our website where we have under quick visitor resources. We also hold a big land sea symposium every November. And so you can go there and you can view the presentations from last year. And there's also an activities guide for the Cape Perpetua area that's linked there. If you're coming to the area, feel free to check it out. It has different hikes, viewpoints, tide pooling areas, different recreational activities that touch the marine reserve. And a variety of other resources here. And there's my contact information. My email is capeperpetuacommunications@gmail.com. And do connect with us on Facebook if you have a Facebook account. And that is it.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you very much. And that was our last speaker. And so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, because it says that I'm still muted. So there's obviously a little bit of an issue. But yeah, if everybody would like to turn their videos back on, we're just gonna click back here to the very beginning and just have this slide up about the marine reserves themselves. And if anyone is interested in asking any questions, now is your chance. You can either type in your question or you may raise your hand and I will unmute you. So, and I will also turn my video back on as well. And we will just see if we have any questions. Okay, let's see. I see that Kristen has raised your hand. Kristen, I will get right to you and unmute you. Let's see. Oh, allow to talk. Okay, Kristen, I think you're unmuted. Make sure that are you there? Let's see. Let me try that again.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, great, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wanted some clarification on whose auspices these reserves and protected areas are under, because as you, I'm sure, know, Trump issued a executive order that lifts the limits on commercial fishing at the ocean sanctuary off of New England. And I'm just wondering if these are subject to the same kind of presidential orders. Like, could they be threatened in the same way?
I don't believe so. If I understand correctly, that was a national monument, so it was at a higher level, whereas these marine reserves are Oregon's marine reserves, and they're all within the state boundary. So it would be state territory.
Okay, that's good.
Versus federal.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to answer too as well, and it's state territory as well. Thank you, Kristen. And Mary Garrett, Wonderful. I'm going to allow you to talk. Okay, it looks like you may talk now, Mary.
Okay. We are attempting to do this in the southern part around Coquille Point. I'm out of Bandon. And I'm wondering how these reserves are monitored or the rules enforced. If there are offenders out there taking animals they're not supposed to take, or fishing where they're not supposed to fish, who's monitoring that and enforcing it? And then what are the consequences?
Who would like to take that one?
So it is enforced by Oregon State Police. They don't have a whole lot of people, stationed along the coast, keeping with their eyes out. So, and at least in the case of Cape Falcon, we do have a lot of interested residents who keep an eye out and will call the Oregon State Police when they see a violation. And if you do see a violation that you want to report, what's really important is to get as much information as you can about the vessels. So if you have binoculars, if you can look and see what its name is, that is helpful. There was a second part to the question, though. I forgot what it was.
What are the consequences to an offender? We work down at Coquille Point protecting the nesting seabirds and the pups that haul out at the bottom of the rock. And, we're always told, and it's always a good idea to take pictures and give as much information as you can. A lot of times you don't think about it until it's too late. But what we found this year is there's a lot more people feeling like they don't want to be told, even if you're trying to educate them about the wildlife and why you're there and why you're protecting. They just more entitled to go up into areas they shouldn't be going up into. And it helps to have a badge, some kind of logo on your jacket. We work with Fish and Wildlife. But I'm just wondering with this marine reserve, how what are the consequences for people who are violating whatever rules?
Does anyone have an answer to that?
I'm not sure of the consequences. I think though what happens is initially it's more education. Some people don't know. If they're a vessel, most likely they know. I know many of the boats and the fishermen, they've got exact coordinates. But if for folks that don't know, sometimes that's the case, especially if you see them fishing from shore or whatnot. It's more of an educational thing. And so the consequence though, I would imagine goes up. The more times that you might do something you're not supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Dennis. We have had some incidents of not so much marine violations, but onshore violations. And the state Parks Department was very helpful in getting what looked like a police force to show up. And they err on the side of warning rather than fines right away. I'm sure there probably are some fine activities, but you also mentioned the fact that you have volunteers who may be confronting people. We were very lucky to have the cooperation of the Federal Fish and Wildlife Group, and they gave us some vests, so we look very official. But I think the approach, though, is not to be hostile, but to, try to educate people, acquaint them with the consequences of their violations and why not to do it.
Right. I know that at Haystack Rock, the Haystack Rock Awareness Program, who I have worked with and volunteered with, we called it enforcement cloaked in education. And that can be a great way to a very friendly way of enforcing through pointing out what is around there. But thanks for your question, Mary. It's great to hear your voice. We have a couple of written questions here. We have Nikki and then Brian. Nikki asks, what does ocean development mean? Thank you. Who would like to take that one?
I think in Oregon, the main concern is energy projects, and anyone else can also jump in. But So that would be like offshore wind projects, and then also any placement of cables that are coming in off of the ocean onto land. Does anyone else have any examples they know of? Okay.
No, that's what I understand as well. Yeah, it's really your offshore wind and offshore wave potentially as well. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right, waves. Thank you. I was forgetting something.
Wave energy. And Brian asks, discuss what no fishing areas means in the ODF and W handouts. Does anybody want to take that one? You know, Brian is a Coast Watch volunteer near the Cape Perpetua area at 10 Mile Creek.
So I'll just take a quick stab. You know, what I've heard from ODF and W is if it looks like you're fishing, you're fishing. So don't look like you're fishing and don't be fishing. You know, really, like if you have a hook and it's near the water, then you're fishing. So all that gear needs to be inside your boat if you're crossing through a marine reserve, and be very, very clear about your activity is that could be a violation of a marine reserve.
Yeah, that's a good point, that they are allowed to carry their gear through that area, but just not be fishing. No nets down, no hooks down.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Let us know if that doesn't answer your question, and you can ask me or Tara after this is over, and we can talk about that more if that's not clear. Nancy Thomas says, I understand an energy project is being implemented at Driftwood area before Seal Rock. Dennis, do you know anything about that, or Tara?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Nancy, but we could ask Philip about that, and perhaps also because Fawn Custer actually lives at Seal Rock, she might know about that, but I haven't actually heard anything. A wave energy. Okay, there's the second part of your question, a wave energy project. I haven't heard of anything of that, like actually going through. Maybe they are just researching it, but it looks like if you have information about it being implemented, maybe something is, but none of us here know the answer to that. So yeah, I'll make a note to ask Philip about that, Nancy. Thank you for your question. South of Seal Rock. Okay, we'll talk to Philip about that, and Fawn. So I made a couple of notes here. I don't see any questions right at the moment. We're going to close up here pretty soon because we like to keep these close to an hour. But so I just think it's very interesting to see the diversity of all of these marine reserves. As you can see, some of them have a lot more humans and visitation than others. What really sticks out to me especially is Otter Rock. And also Cape Falcon. There we have at Oswald West, but those tidal areas in Otter Rock are really exposed. And so I want to encourage folks here to really get in touch with Dennis. If you live in that area, I think that they are looking to maybe do some schedules and try to get some groups out there to maybe do some of that enforcement cloaked in education as well. And I wanted to ask too, just our panelists here today, do any of you have regular meetings that, that volunteers can attend to learn more, or do you recommend they just go to your websites? I don't know if Otter Rock has a website yet. I think you're working on a Facebook page, but do any of you have meetings that the public, or if a volunteer wants to know more, that they can attend? Or for some of you, are those just like your lecture series? For example, Cape Perpetua has a great speaker series. Cape Falcon has a speaker series as well. Would any of you, any information there for any of you?
For Cape Perpetua, we don't have any meetings necessarily specifically on the Marine Reserve, but it may be one of our topics of discussion for one of our speaker series weekends, and that happens in the winter, November through March. But our website's the best spot to learn more at capeperpetuacollaborative.org, as well as find out about the speaker series, our events, as well as the different citizen science opportunities.
Thank you.
Yeah, at Cape Falcon, I would just say we do have a monthly meeting, but it's our committee, which is, I mean, it's great if anyone wants to attend, but it's not as much geared towards people who are new. Although if somebody new wants to join the meeting, they are very welcome, and we would love to have them. But if people are looking to get involved in a little bit more of a preliminary way, I would suggest subscribing to our email newsletter, which comes out every other month. And also, if people are interested in volunteering, just send me an email. We have thought about doing sort of like volunteer intro meetings, but at this point, it just makes more sense to do it kind of one-on-one. So that's the way we've been handling it.
Okay.
For Cascade Head, yeah, just go to cascadehead.org or our Facebook page, and you can kind of connect with us there. I would encourage people also to check out our YouTube channel if you're just interested more in what's going on in the Biosphere Reserve. We have an exceptional collection of video of the Biosphere Reserve and events that we've done. So if you're interested in volunteering, you'll kind of get a better sense of what it means to BioBlitz. What do we mean by a boat excursion? We've really done a lot of work is trying to generate the word out, and we appreciate having you here today on World's Oceans Day. But yeah, cascadehead.org, and we have a sign up on our the Get Involved link, and just sign up there. And we put out an e-newsletter. We had our second one. We just went out, for this time period. So we're kind of new to the e-newsletter, but we do have that building in our repertoire as well.
Okay.
We have had some formative, because we're in formative stages, we have had monthly meetings, which have been disrupted by the pandemic. But, and what we'd like to do, we're still kind of in a recruiting mode here. So what we'd like to do is to put anyone who's interested on the mailing list. There's no commitment, but you can check in on, where we are and what we're doing and what opportunities there are. We'll have a great need for some volunteer work, again, around the summer season here to try to protect the area a bit and to educate people. So I would, if you're interested, please just email me and we'll get you on the list. Even if you don't go to the meeting, at least we've got your name, and might reach out to you once in a while to see how you can help.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dennis.
And then of course there's the ODF and W site, which encompasses all of the marine reserves and information. It's OregonMarineReserves.com. And you can find out about all 5 marine reserves there, as well as the rules, the coordinates, and a variety of other scientific research they're doing. They do a blog post every month, and that's a great site to check out too. It's very comprehensive.
Thank you very much, Tara. That's great. But right before we close up here, I'm just going to kind of give a shout out to that Trail Ambassador program that Margaret mentioned. If you want more information about how to be a trail ambassador, send me an email. And I actually was going to I'm going to go really quickly through here and put my last slide up with my information. But I know that they are looking for volunteers for that. Also, one thing that we're going to be kind of focusing on Coast Watch with our partners and with a lot of areas in the beach are increased sea star surveys. And these are really, they're called sea star observation logs. And I had a webinar earlier this spring about that. They aren't these permanent sites. They're actually, you can do a sea star survey observation log at any time of the year. And there are many, many areas that actually the Marine organization out of UC Santa Cruz have really, in this webinar, really encouraged people to start doing these observation logs. And so in all of these marine reserves and in some of our rocky habitats, we're going to be looking for others that really want to be involved in that. Also taking place in these areas are, as Dennis mentioned, with the people holding their hands, are the marine debris surveys. so if you would like to get involved with those, you can contact any of these folks or contact me. And also we're looking to do even more of those surveys, because that marine debris survey it's just about 100 meters. And so there's a lot of room to do a lot more of those. So I would like to also say we're having another webinar on June 15th that will be about coastal grasses and hunting hybrid grasses. That's going to be very interesting. It's a new citizen science opportunity that we have. On June 17th, we will be having in partnership with Lincoln City Audubon and with North Coast Rocky Habitats, a webinar which will have a number of guests answering questions about the Rocky habitat management updates that are happening right now in the proposal process. And so that's June 17th. And then on June 18th, we will be showing with a number of other partners, including Surfrider and the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve and others, the story of plastic. And that is actually going to be on a Thursday night. And that will be hosted by Surfrider Foundation and us. But so just wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here today. It was great. Thanks for joining us and for sticking around a little bit later. And if any of you didn't catch their Paul, Margaret, Dennis's, and Tara's information, just contact me and I will send that to you. And again, my name is Jessie. I'm the Coast Watch Volunteer Coordinator. This is my contact information. And thank you for attending. This webinar has been recorded and will be available either later today or tomorrow on our YouTube site. Contact me if you would like that address for our YouTube site. All right.
Thank you, Jessie.
Thanks everybody for being here. Have a great day.